Here's the thing, Bruce. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all.
This is HBR News number 375. Stallone divorce escalates, North Dakota murder over political differences, where we discuss the stories of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello everyone and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian and I am here with my co-hosts right now, Hannah. Well, actually, yeah, everybody's here. Hannah Wallen, Mike J, and Dr. Randermerkham. And we are going to be entertaining you for the next hour and a half by discussing our thoughts and rants and maybe even a little bit of yelling and crying over the latest news of the week. While we also try to bring you guys maybe like a slightly more unique perspective than what you usually hear. So please be sure to join us today by continuing to the conversation, contributing through the live chat as well as the comment section after the video is done. On this week's HBR News Show, we're going to be talking about the divorce, maybe, of Sylvester Stallone, a North Dakota man who killed another man over political differences. The Air Force tells cisgender men not to apply for a new internship, and more. So stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. And I was struggling to find something to go through. I do have a couple of options, but I'll show you guys what I'm looking at in terms of topics. And again, I'll let the chat, the folks in the patron show decide what tickles their turtles the most. All right, so here's one from Mashable. It says, trad wives claim feminism ruined everything. They're wrong. Capitalism did. This is kind of an obvious one, but it could still be fun to like read through and try to unravel or untangle the logic of that. And we also have a couple of other ones that might be interesting. So there's talk about this new Italian prime minister. I suppose, or from what I understand, it's the first time Italy's actually elected a woman into that position.
Oh, they're going to want to talk about that. Everyone's talking about that in the last couple of days.
Yeah, we might have to talk about
because it's so rich in genderized hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Especially I think this. What are they calling it? Gender washing or something? When a woman is woman's there to make everything, to soften everything up. Not that feminists would ever do that with their politics.
Of course not. Yeah, I think they call it gender washing. It's essentially whenever there is a right-wing, non-feminist, conservative woman that is like becoming popular and rising in, I don't know, whatever circles she happens to be in. The feminists always come out and say, well, it's not because she's a woman. It's not because she's interested in what we do. Basically, she's not a woman. It's got everything to do with the fact that the patriarchy is using her to boost itself, because women have never gotten the respect from men except when those women are propping up right-wing ideas, I guess.
Can you even imagine how difficult it would be to give Lupron to children if you were doing it in a gruff, manly voice? No, it has to be done by these gender professors who talk like that. No, we're not castrating children. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there is that, and they're saying like this is an article from Arwa Madawi, who you guys might know from The Guardian because she's always good for some insane takes. She says, it is great that little girls now have role models so they too can grow up to be crazed world leaders. In reference to the Italian prime minister, which I think is just kind of gold, right? We are talking about a man in this case, right? Oh, we're not. And then we have, I think, this story, which I thought was kind of interesting. There's this male teacher who put up like a short series of TikTok videos explaining how he refuses to help children under a certain age because of all of the stigma that male teachers get. and he explains that, you know, it's not because he doesn't want to. He just thinks it's too dangerous for him. And I thought that, you know, that just sounds true to me. Like I've substitute taught before, and I've done it with very young children, and they basically tell me, you know, don't, whatever you do, don't touch the kids. And so, not like they think I'm suspect or anything, but the
No,
idea
like you can't
that,
even pat them on the shoulder.
yeah,
Like if somebody's crying, you can't pat them on the shoulder because you're a man. I know this because my dad was a teacher for almost 40 years, and he kind of was there for the evolution of that. When he was teaching in the 70s, he was the facilitator for like the yearbook advisor and the photography club. He did all that stuff, right? So he had students that he taught how to develop film, and you know you do that in the dark room, and he would teach both male and female students in the 70s. And then as things progressed or regressed, however you want to put it, with the way people thought of men in the classroom, he began to not be able to teach the female students, and he would have the guys that he trusted teach the female students. And when I say trusted, I mean guys that he trusted to protect themselves, not guys that he didn't think were going to do anything, because the guys that are in the photo club are not the oddballs, you know, the odd men out that would do anything violent to somebody. They're the guys that are the ones getting their lockers stacked and getting wedgies in gym. So they're not. But in any case, Dad had to, you know, got to the point where he had to say, I can't do darkroom anymore. None of the guys, none of the gals, nobody can do it. And film had to be, you know, he had to give an explanation on it. But the students had to use, there's a t-shirt shaped bag you can get to do all of the things that you have to do in the dark in a darkroom. So he had to buy special equipment so that they could do their darkroom work in the light. And then eventually, you know, we went digital because you can, you know, and that solved that problem. But it was always, you can't be in a position where someone can make an allegation, because if someone makes an allegation, it doesn't matter if it's false. You're still screwed.
yeah,
And that was, he went from, you know, being able to benefit the students without having to worry about that, to not even being able to pat a kid on the shoulder. And there was one time where he had a kid in his classroom that was really having a rough time, and he just put one hand on their back, their like just from shoulder to neck, and was like, you know, this sucks right now, but it's not permanent. You're going to be okay, and you know, we'll get through this. And you know, I'm here to support you. And the things you do when a teenager is going through a rough time.
yeah,
And the kid's mom came in and just had a fit because Dad was a man. Not because touching somebody on the shoulder is inappropriate, but because a man shouldn't do it.
If only he knew all he had to do was dress as the Little Mermaid, and you wouldn't believe what he could get away with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad would have had to dress as the Very Large Mermaid.
Most drag queens are rather large men. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big hairy mermaid with the baritone voice.
Yeah. Pipe. All right, but anyway.
Hi, I'm very feminine.
I would like to be a part of your world. So anyway, thanks for the little backstory. So those are the like after show topics we could choose from. So we'll see which one the audience wants. It will likely be the one about the new Prime Minister of Italy. I thought about making that a story, but I figured we could just do a patron show on it because I don't really know much about her, to be honest, except that she's the first female prime minister in Italy. That's what I know. Anyway, so if you would like to participate in our after shows, either as a member of the audience or even as a member of the panel by like being a part of the discussion itself, go to feedthebadger.com and set up a monthly subscription. And if you want to continue to see us grow, we are still doing our monthly fundraiser. Any and all help is welcome. I think it's active for like 5 days or something at the most. So yeah, please consider helping us out by going to feedthebadger.com/projects /badger. You know what? There's a link in the description. It's the Badger Media Blitz. It comes right up when you go to the website. There's no need for me to spell all that out because no one's typing it as I talk, right? So check it out in the description and see if you can throw a few shekels in the hat. Anything helps. Anything. $1, $5, whatever you can do. All right. And then lastly, if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we've been yeeted from the internet, go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com, where all of our content lives. Some of it's audio only, so it's just podcasts, and then some of it is whatever formats we originally uploaded it in, which is frequently videos, but I don't know if that's an absolute truth because I'm always doing the videos, and so I'm probably just centering myself on the workload. All right, so anyways, with all of that out of the way, let us get into today's stories. First up, we're going to be talking about Sylvester Stallone, which, surprisingly, I haven't really... He seems to be pretty good about avoiding, TMZ crap. But apparently, after being married to Sylvester Stallone for 25 years, Jennifer Flavin, who I guess is his wife, filed for divorce in August. It has been revealed the couple didn't have a prenuptial agreement, meaning that the former Rocky star would have no way to protect his $400 million.
Like it would with a prenup. Everyone knows a prenup means shit because of judges.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't have protected him, but especially when you make that much. I think the more you make, the harder it is for a prenup to protect you. So, both Stallone and Flavin had requested an abatement, possibly to keep their divorce terms more private than if they were hashed out in court. Stallone's representative told the media that they, quote, we are amicably and privately addressing these personal issues, end quote. The divorce filing accused Stallone of trying to move their marital assets. Allegations Stallone denied, with his lawyer countering that he, quote, has not engaged in any conduct which constitutes intentional dissipation, depletion, and or waste of marital assets. Quote. Stallone and Flavin are the parents of 3 adult daughters, Sophia, 26, Sistine, 24, and Scarlett, 20. Around the same time Flavin filed for divorce, she posted a picture with her 3 daughters captioned, "These girls are my priority, nothing else matters, the 4 of us forever. #truth, #family, #forever. According to Inside Edition, around the same time, Stallone changed the tattoo on his arm of his wife, so he used to have a tattoo of his wife on his arm, into a portrait of his dog, Butkus, the bull mastiff that was featured in the Rocky movies, and it was, in fact, Stallone's dog as well. Kept it, like the turtles, right? Stallone and Flavin never signed a prenuptial agreement during their 1997 courthouse wedding. If divorced, it is likely Stallone would be legally required to give Flavin a major portion of his $400 million, although Flavin had a career as a model as well as a serious skincare cosmetics line. However, as of last week, it appears the couple have reconciled. According to an insider that spoke to People magazine, the filing came as a surprise to Stallone. When Jen filed for divorce, she felt she had no option. She felt unheard and was very frustrated, they said. She had been telling Sly that she was going to file, but it seemed he didn't believe her. it pretty much came as a shock to him. He never wanted a divorce. He always wanted to work things out. He has been working hard to win her back. They love each other, the source added. They want to keep their family together. So it sounds like it's like shit test on her part. She wants him to, you know, pursue her, woo her, court her, whatever. That's kind of what I get from it. But
and they said they wanted to keep it amicable and privately addressed, but somehow it made it to the media. It made it to us, and I guess we're among the media people talking about it. And maybe the fact that the media is talking about it got them to reconsider what they were doing. That would be good. Or maybe someone yelled. Maybe one of their daughters yelled, "Stop, or my mom will shoot." Until now, I never realized how clever that movie really was.
yeah,
It was clever. It was a subversive take on the state of the family courts. It was about the bazooka that every woman was pointing at every man, dangling precariously like the sword of Damocles, waiting. Yeah, no, it was just a dumb fucking movie. And it's the sort of thing Sly had to do for money. What have you ever done? Flavin, serious skincare, my ass. But no, thanks for not shooting him with it as of yet, or shooting your daughters, which is what that gun does. Mm-hmm. Thanks for putting down the bazooka. That would have been fucking gay of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the thing is, only she has it too. You won't see a news story like this about a man, filing for divorce and then saying, "Oh, I didn't mean it," which I'm glad that she didn't mean it, but that's still a rotten way to get somebody's attention. And honestly, in a lot of situations, like I don't know their situation permanently, but I've seen women do this where they take it to the point of threatening divorce and say they feel unheard. And what they're saying when they say they feel unheard is, "How dare you not agree with the things that I've said?" And it's really rough to deal with because you can't hold them to account for their end of the conversation. Like, usually when you have a conflict between two people in a relationship, there are things done on both sides that are inconsiderate of the other. There are, it looks like from the outside in these kind of relationships where it deteriorates like this, that as people get older, instead of finding the idiosyncrasies of the spouse cute and endearing and stuff, which is what happens when your relationship gets closer over time, they become annoying. So the the woman will get annoyed by every little detail about the man in the relationship, or her female partner if it's a lesbian. Usually it's the more feminine one that does it too. And the guy doesn't necessarily have the same issue, so he doesn't recognize what's going on. Or if he does have things going on that he has an issue with, like he's constantly being nagged, or the wife is cheating, or anything like that, his side of the conflict never gets addressed. And it's really a way women can use to crack the whip, where they turn around and say, "Well, I'll leave because I can take half of everything and go, and I will get custody of the kids and you'll have nothing." And that's, you either do what I say or I go. And that the guy ends up in a situation where he either sucks it up and stays inside a very unhappy marriage, or, he sucks it up and deals with a divorce. And I've only ever seen one relationship go a different way than that. And it took a while. It took a long time. Because originally it started out as the guy sucking up and staying in a relationship where he was being nagged and mistreated and everything. And it eventually got to the point where, because of a disability, she depends on him And so then she was willing to be like, all right, we can work things out and we'll both talk about our issues. No, she's still a little bit, she still acts like a woman. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
But so she's still a little bit more demanding than he is. But he has the ability to say, look, the kids are grown. I can walk away if I have to. And there's really not anything you can do but file for disability. And that'll be it.
Is that yeah, so that's the thing. Like, I talked with Lindsay about this article, and because to my knowledge, I never heard of, and maybe someone in the chat knows better, so I'm not pretending to be really knowledgeable on this, but I've never heard of Stallone like being involved with some big public dispute with, wife or anything.
Anybody,
like
yeah.
Yeah, or anyone. Like, he's always been, I guess I would say a private person, but I don't think that's quite right. I think he's just not like a lot of people in Hollywood, where they make their business everyone's business. He's not that kind of person. And
yeah,
Lindsay was saying when we were talking about it, she was like, "This sounds like a shit test. It's like women, they're too comfortable, like because I was talking about how men when they're young and hungry and they're pursuing things and they're chasing their dreams and all that, it's that kind of behavior that usually attracts women. But when men get married and then they start like their next adventure, they have children and they're still working, because Stallone is working now, like he just came out with a movie not long ago, but the tone changes. He's not the same like hungry guy, because now he's a father, and becoming a father changes you, like it changes your hormones. And so he's doing the father thing now, probably the grandfather thing, in fact. I'm not really sure.
The man's 76 or something.
Yeah, he's like in his 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
if he's not doing the grandfather thing by now, his kids better hurry up.
Yeah. And I think that his wife, she wasn't feeling, and I'll consider this to be somewhat charitable to her, but I think that like when that happens, sometimes women, they don't feel like the relationship is the same, because he's not wooing her, he's not romancing her. And I think that is what often brings women to cheat or to create problems or to, start drama in the home, because they want the man to fight for her, and, they want to go back to that time. And I can only figure that that's what this is. It's a shit test. And he didn't take the bait. And so, they're now, I guess, like in the process of working it out. So, and Meredith G, she just gave us $5 and says the Stallone issue sounds like a shit test about money given the moves that the wife's lawyer made. Yeah, exactly. And a couple on top of that like Stallone's probably still gonna be able to make money for a while, because his name, is worth something. And Lindsay even said to me, she was like, why would anyone divorce Sylvester Stallone? He's like one of the most awesome men in Hollywood. So
yeah,
she's a big fan of his. So
the woman probably doesn't feel centered in the relationship, we'll put it that way. And then this is something else that happens and it's probably unique to generations after the mid 20th century. And men and women used to, when they got married, both roles would change. They would become partners in the family, which in and of itself is like a business. You run your family like a business financially. And in the early 20th century, and before that, your family pretty much was a business. Your kids would go to work if you were not wealthy. And everything went into the family budget. It wasn't something where The dad did the work and supported the kids, and the mom stayed home and made cookies, and like everything was hard work for both parents and any kid old enough to follow instructions. And this is different because we have luxury. So you got the man going to work and the woman staying home in the mid 20th century. And then in the latter half of the 20th century, you had women working for themselves, for their own reasons, not as partners to their husbands. So I think in a lot of ways, relationships that didn't evolve new traditions to be modern traditional relationships, where the traditional part was we are partners in an endeavor together and we're equal, and therefore the husband doesn't need to woo the wife, right? They're partners. They've established their relationship and it's their home together. Like everybody else got divorced. And that's why we have such a high divorce rate. And that may be the attitude that most women have, as rather than thinking of themselves as the partner of their husband in the endeavor of their home, they think of themselves as his prize. And that may be what's going on here too.
Yeah, could be. Well, let's move on to the next story. So let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. Maybe name a favorite guilty pleasure Stallone movie, if you know of any that you like. It can't be Rocky and Rambo because those are too mainstream. Go obscure. I don't know, Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, for example.
That's the only one that springs to mind. It's the only one that digs.
I can't think of the name of it, where he had to break out of jail with
Oh yeah, was it him and Schwarzenegger?
No.
Yeah.
Demolition Man is not a guilty pleasure, by the way.
No, it's not.
That's a genuinely awesome film.
Yes, Demolition Man is awesome. And there was one. I think I know what you're talking. Oh, Lockup. I think it was Lockup.
Yes, I think that's it.
Yeah, Lockup. Yeah, Tango and Cash. That's a good suggestion as well. Cobra. Yeah, there's plenty. Judge Dredd. I mean, I don't know if anyone likes that movie, but it had some stuff in it that was kind of cool. But anyway, let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. Now I'm going to move on to the next story. And we're going to be talking about this really unfortunate... Yeah? I know you're here, Mike. I was just setting it up. We're going to be talking about a very unfortunate incident. What were we going to say?
I was just coughing real quick.
Oh, okay. Are you all right? You good to go?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I'm good. Okay. So yeah, we're going to talk about something a little unfortunate here. And just something that gets worse the more you read. So, early on Sunday the 18th, Ian McHenry, North Dakota, an 18-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man engaged in an argument outside a bar. The two would separate, but it would not be the last time they met that evening. The 18-year-old, Kaylor Ellingson, would later call his mom and inform her of the incident, asking if she could drive him home. He would also tell her something even more shocking, that the 41-year-old man, later identified as Shannon Brandt, was following him. Without warning, Brandt chased down Ellingson with his vehicle, cornering him in an alleyway and striking him. Ellingson did not immediately die on impact, and could have possibly been helped had Brandt immediately rendered aid or immediately contacted emergency services. But Brandt opted instead to linger around the area, eventually calling 911 on himself, before deciding to drive home to his house in a different city. By the time Ellingson's mother had arrived to the hospital her son had been taken to, he was already dead. In his call to 911, Brandt describes his interaction with Ellingson that evening as a political argument. He further claimed that Ellingson was part of a Republican extremist group and alleged the teen was threatening him. Brandt lists these as his reasons for running down the teen in an alleyway. Police soon arrested Brandt, who openly admitted to having had been drinking that evening and would eventually test for a blood alcohol level above the legal driving limit. During his court hearing on Monday, Brandt pushed back on his bail and charges. He appeared to not understand why he was charged and argued his bail, which was set at $50,000, again, $50,000 for vehicular manslaughter. He said it was too high, stating, quote, "I have a job, a life, and a house, and these things that I don't exactly want to see go by the wayside. Family that are very important to me." End quote. Brandt would later be released on bond while he awaits trial.
So, yeah, all in all, this fellow, this Shannon fellow, sounds like a guy who doesn't have a firm grasp on the concept of consequences, or even a flimsy grasp on the concept of consequences. It's that he called 911 on himself. That's the part of the story that makes it confusing in both directions. It suggests that this wasn't just, it wasn't a sort of cold-blooded act of first-degree murder. If it was, he probably would have fled the scene and tried to get away with it. It sounds like he just wanted to take out his rage on this lad and possibly intimidate him, and it hadn't occurred to him that ramming someone with a car can result in death. So he panicked and he called 911, confessed to his crime, panicked again, and then fled the scene. It hadn't occurred to him that confessing to a crime can result in the police tracking you down. Like I said, these are the actions of someone who doesn't equate their actions with consequences. And most bizarrely of all, he went on to say that he didn't understand why he was charged with a crime, despite having called 911 to report that self-committed crime. Like, my brother in Christ, you literally confessed to a violent offense to the police. Where in the fresh fuck is your head at, please? Which is a silly question. His head is at the television. As Biden and the Democrat Party tell him in veiled but no uncertain words that MAGA Republicans are a threat to his way of life and to his democracy. And not just in that recent Biden speech with the blood red background and all the... He's been watching any of the mainstream media in the past 6 years. That's the message he's been getting. So that's the world he lives in. This black and white world where blue is the light and red is the darkness, except where it isn't, given that black is good and white is bad, except where it isn't. Round and round, up and down, up is down, and vice versa, but not vice versa, except where it is. He's confused. He's not a cold-blooded killer, but he's not mentally ill either. He's just a normal guy who's allowed himself to become terminally confused by these gaslighting, obfuscating liars in the media, who he was naive enough to ever trust to be telling him the truth. And in a way, that's even more terrifying. I'm certainly not excusing him. It's nothing short of evil for him to say, but I have a life that I don't want to be taken away, when he's just taken someone else's life. But this is a different kind of evil than you get from, a calculated serial killer, someone who understands what it means to take a life, and that's why they do it. This motherfucker doesn't seem to understand what a life even is. He seems to think of something he has, but his victim did not have. He's an NPC. He's a killer NPC, and like I said, that's even scarier than a player character who kills for the thrills or kills to try and break their programming. This guy killed because that is his programming. Because the media has surreptitiously programmed him to do it, and he doesn't even understand why or how it happened. He's not the only one who needs to go to prison. His game developers need to go to prison. Whoever programmed the AI that is now in control of his brain needs to go to prison, and for even longer, honestly. And where do we start? I don't know. The obvious answer is Biden, but I think Biden might be an NPC as well. How about whoever's talking into Biden's earpiece? Apropos of nothing. Apropos of nothing. Thanks, Obama. Question mark. Dot.
That's the hard thing. You look in history, and we have an easy one to look at, because the most documented political mass murder in history would be the Holocaust. Everybody knows quite a bit about what happened after the part where the victims were put into camps started, but people haven't paid a lot of attention to the lead up. And if you go back to the Holocaust Museum website, you can see it. It actually documents like what happened in Nazi Germany prior to the actual Holocaust, prior to even the laws being passed that were discriminatory pre-Holocaust. And there was a political faction that demonized the Jews in Nazi Germany for years prior to the Holocaust. And the kind of logic that they used was very simple. It's okay to attack these people because of who they are, right? So that logic getting used against any group of people, now that we have that one that's incredibly documented, and then we also have our history in the United States with black people in the South, and Jim Crow laws were not the only things that kept black people in the South scared and down during that time period. There were people who felt that it was okay for them to act aggressively against black people because they were black, and all they had to do was file, some sort of allegation with the rest of the public. That guy whistled at this white girl. That guy was flirting with this white girl, right? And now that was a minority in that population. Most people didn't do that. There were just enough that did do that were in power, or out in the country, or in areas of the city where they could get away with it. But it still had the same effect. And what this guy is dealing with is, in the United States, we have a political faction that is saying, if you disagree with our politics, you're a Nazi. If you disagree with our politics, you're a fascist. And therefore, the phrase, it's okay to punch Nazis, like, that's not the start of it. That's when it got pretty violent, right? We now have a history in the last few years of violence being excused by political differences, and I'm talking whole cities burning. We've seen the pictures, we've seen the video, we've seen the news guys standing in front of huge fires, huge buildings burning down and everything. This is a mostly peaceful protest. But yeah, because they're not attacking the wrong people, right? They're attacking the people who don't agree. And that's what we're dealing with now. We are in the stage. And I know you guys, there's probably people in the listening audience going, "Oh, panic mongering," but no, this is a pattern. This is a historical pattern. If you don't pay attention, then you're responsible for letting it happen. We are in the stage where a set of people are socially demonized and legally attacked through not having consequences when these things are done, right? Where it becomes acceptable to engage in violence against that group of people. So we've gone through, the group's already been named, right? The group's already been shamed and demonized as socially unacceptable, as their ideas being bad. We are now in the stage where we're shamed and demonized as being acceptable targets for social violence. And that is just about the last step that we go through before we get shamed and demonized as acceptable targets for state violence. And there's already been some discussion about that. And it's not Republicans. It's anybody who resists the ideas of the people that are in power, the establishment. And the establishment is progressive. So all the walkaway Democrats that are like, well, it was a Republican, not one of us. Guess what? You're next. Right? All the people that are like, well, we're Green Party, we're not involved in this. Guess what? You're next. Everybody that's, well, we're libertarian, we're not involved in either party. We're better than you guys because we're anti-authoritarian. You're probably next before the other two. Right? There's no such thing as a Republican extremist. There's no such thing as a Democrat extremist. There are no political party extremists. There's Antifa. There are white supremacists. There are black supremacists. Even the SPLC had to admit that, right? But there's no such thing as a Republican extremist. And the fact that the guy thought that saying that phrase, Republican extremist, would excuse his actions should scare the ever-loving fuck out of you, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green, Communist, anti-communist, anti-capitalist, whatever. Nobody should think that it's okay to kill another person themselves in an act of vigilante violence or even perceived self-defense against somebody else's extreme political beliefs. There should always be involvement of law enforcement if there's a threat, right? And there should always be a recognition that if somebody isn't actively trying to kill you or actively attacking you at least, you have nothing to defend against. And this guy went off the deep end entirely. Right? He's the canary in the coal mine. The people who are less attached to reality are the canary in the coal mine. As you get further along into this way of thinking that there could be this party or that party extremist, and it's okay to act against those people because they have wrongthink, those canaries get joined by people who are not normally detached from reality, who don't have a serious drinking problem that causes people can point at and say, well, this is why they're behaving badly, who normally just go to work or go to school or go to church and take care of their families and do nothing outside of the law. And then eventually you get to the point where the only people left are the people who are engaging in those behaviors, the people who are standing back and letting them engage in those behaviors, and the people who are targeted by those behaviors. And if you don't turn the ship around now, you are going to have to decide which of those groups you're going to be in.
Yeah.
Some stuff I wanted to highlight here.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I didn't necessarily include in the write-up, but I think should be mentioned. And this did come from an anonymous source, so, consider the source, grain of salt, etc. Apparently one of his neighbors talking to Fox News basically says that this guy was more or less a known element within the area. That he had been, here's the quote, nuts his whole life, end quote. And that it was completely normal that he would just go on these, booze-fueled benders and just wreak havoc. And it was like, oh, that's just Shannon. That's just what he does, man. Right. And the other interesting thing was the same neighbor, or possibly another anonymous neighbor, says that the whole the argument with a Republican extremist, that was an excuse. That wasn't the reason he actually hit the teenager. It was probably some other reason.
So this kid wasn't even a MAGA extremist?
Well, number
MAGA,
one, that's
a Trump fan or whatever.
So number one, that's just what this anonymous neighbor says.
Yeah.
However, the highway patrol of the area of North Dakota investigated that link and said there is absolutely nothing suggesting that this kid, Kyler Ellingson, was a right-wing Republican extremist. There's nothing to back that up at all.
I mean, not that it should matter.
Well, again, because there is no such thing.
Yeah.
But
not that it should matter, but also, I don't know if that makes it any better or worse, because now it's just this guy making this up out of whole cloth, like this again, like this was going to be his get out of jail free card. Like, the cops would have went, "Oh, he liked Trump."
That's just it.
Get out of here! You didn't commit a crime.
That should scare the shit out of you that anybody would think that, because that idea is not organic. That's not something that somebody came along and was like, "I'm just going to make this up and it'll work." Right? That's something that he thought would work because of the influences in his life.
Yeah.
Right. And even if it wasn't the inspiration for the act, it's still terrifying that somebody thought, well, I can get away with this if I just say this.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's, I mean, and men should understand this, right? Because if this was a woman who did this, she could probably get away with some forms of attack, even if it's vehicular homicide's not probably one of them. But she could get away with some forms of attack by falsely accusing the guy of some sort of sexual impropriety, right?
Yep.
And very similarly, if she could get away with it by claiming to have been in a relationship with the guy and he's abusing her, right? Or being harassed. Mm-hmm. So there is a history of people getting away with this kind of thing when it's women, and the allegation is sexual impropriety by a man. It's just that now we're starting to hear this demographic just being part of this demographic. And of course, when we start having that, you could have just being male as your demographic too.
Well, a lot of people, presumably this guy, believes the idea that the police are inherently racist. All of them, they all just hate black people. But do you think anyone would go ahead and, if they killed a black kid in this way, would they just say to the police, "I just killed him because he's black," safe in the knowledge that the police would go, "Oh, fair enough. We're the police. We hate black people. We'll let you get away." No one would ever do that, because everyone knows that's a bunch of horse shit. The police will still they will prosecute you even harder if you admit to committing that kind of hate crime, because they know no one really believes that. But they think people really do believe that Trump supporters and Republicans really are
dangerous
Nazis. They don't even have to call them Nazis anymore. They just have to call them Trump supporters, or even just Republicans. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that says about the state of things, about what people really believe. I don't think it. Again, he's just confused. They just throw shit at the walls, whatever they think will stick. And it's probably complicated to say what people really believe and what they really believe other people really believe and what other people really believe. It would just be thrown into this chaos where nobody knows.
Yeah, I mean, they've essentially made allegations against non-leftists. I don't know what else to call it, because it's not limited to Republicans or right-wingers. It's basically anyone that doesn't toe the line, and they're all sort of vaguely cast in the same evil role and they just reiterate over and over. Maybe they change the definition of a word a little bit. You know, we call them insurrectionists for a while, and then we call them MAGA Republicans or ultra MAGA or whatever. But they make it easy for people to identify them if they see them, and then they're supposed to have a visceral emotional response to being exposed to them. Now, it might be just like, you know, Mike J said, that this guy was only using political dispute as an excuse, which is really weird, because it means that in his head, if he was doing that, he's basically saying, no, this is totally legal. This is totally okay. You can kill right-wingers if you think that, you know, they're right-wing, like, I mean, or whatever, right? You could just use that. And he was probably exceptionally, you know, damaged or otherwise confused, which I believe is true, because, you know, despite the fact that I can talk about and bring up, you know, like, is there truly a line that can be crossed with rhetoric that could drive some crazy loner to do something radical? Because that's kind of what we've been accused of, right? Like, incels, like, you know, they share crazy ideas, and men's rights activists are so critical of feminism that feminists are afraid that one of them's gonna snap and, like, kill women. And, you know, so they're literally playing the same game. So that's the kind of game I don't really want to play, because I think it's what they do. But also, at the same time, if the rhetoric that's being used is so ubiquitous, if it's, you know, the politicians are all saying it, the media pundits are all saying it, the academics are all saying it, that your entertainment is all saying the same thing, it's all, like, everywhere, and it's constant. And they're telling you to, like, maybe, you know, if you can live out a fantasy and, like, punch one of these people or harm them in some way. Could that be something we could look at and say, this might inspire some violence where we don't really think there should be violence? Or is that kind of giving up the ground on the idea that ideas, you know, should not be censored because there is a claim that they could lead to violence? Because that's what the claims that are made about us are, or people that are more oriented towards liberty or whatever. But because they have such massive megaphones, I think that it is potentially, and again, we're just looking at this one-off incident, so I'm not calling for censorship, but I'm basically just asking. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily the rhetoric, but I think that that's part of it. You know, because, like, you're gonna take a position if you might take a position if you think that everyone else has taken it, which is one of the things that, you know, these, like, leftists want you to believe. They want you to believe that their positions are the most popular and that you should just adopt them because it's easier. And that's why they control all of these institutions, you know?
Let me be real clear about the rhetoric. All right, there's two types of rhetoric in question here. You have the rhetoric that talks about different problems, underlying social causes, things that need to change, recognition that our society should not be set up to encourage unhealthy behaviors and stuff like that, where the rhetoric is about our laws and our policies and what the end result of those laws and policies are, like the welfare system and what it does to people and at whose expense it does it, right? That rhetoric is not dangerous because we're not calling somebody, like, you're not going to see people going out and blaming the people who are broken by the welfare system, who are socially programmed to fail by the welfare system for its existence. That's something that's caused by the machine within the government that perpetuates that system. And that's fueled by law and policy. And the things that need to change aren't individuals that need to be gotten rid of. The things that need to change are our actual written laws and the policies that are made on their basis, and that requires a turnover of power in the state, and you can't get that from attacking like the people around you in your own community. You get that from voting the bastards out and changing the regime, right? But when the rhetoric becomes these people within this demographic are all bad. They all have negative personality traits, and those negative personality traits make them less human. And these political and social issues are a result of the negative personality traits of these people in this demographic. Therefore, we have to get rid of these people in this demographic in order to solve these problems, right? And there doesn't even have to be evidence necessarily. That's throughout history. If you look at different genocides, you look at different state mass murders, that's one of the steps that's done where the blame isn't on law and policy, it's on the demographic in particular. And it can be a race, it can be a religion, it can be a political party, it can be not belonging to a political party. If you look at the communist regimes throughout history that engaged in, it's hard to call what happened in communist Soviet Union a genocide, because multiple races were killed in that one. Right? So all of this goes back to blaming a demographic rather than recognizing the legal and policy causes of issues. And when you start targeting a demographic that way, and you continue by trying to make people feel guilty for being part of that demographic, and using that sense of guilt and a sense of social prejudice to subjugate that demographic, you're now going to impose you're going to impose restrictions on that demographic, and so on. You exclude that demographic from the benefit of laws and policies that maybe benefit other demographics, and then you've completely subjugated them. That paves the way for state violence against that demographic. And I think that's what we're seeing with respect to people who resist the people who I'm hearing myself.
Oh, I don't know why, but I'll.
Okay. But people who I'm trying to think of the word, not just resisting, but who speak out against the existing establishment or the existing regime, dissenters. And so since the demographic now is people who are in dissent against the current regime, although they're using the term white and white supremacy, right? But I mean, if they can call Candace Owens a white supremacist, and like her skin's pretty dark, I don't think she looks very white. So obviously, white supremacist doesn't necessarily mean white people. Then it goes back to you're a dissenter against the regime. And that's what's going on here. We're seeing threat narratives used to convince people that people who dissent against the current regime, the current establishment, are non-people or less human and acceptable targets for violence and harassment and other forms of targeting with anything that would fall under the broad category of bullying. And we're seeing it happen to men and boys first, right? And they're going after men and boys first, but we're not seeing it unique to men and boys. So we're already to the stage where even gynocentrism, which is a pretty powerful thing in society, doesn't protect the individual. There have been instances, there were videos that came out with Antifa attacking female business owners too. So this is pretty serious. And I know, like I said, there's going to be some people I don't know if I'm not really seeing very much in the chat, but there's going to be some people sitting out there going, "You're panic mongering again." No, I'm seeing a pattern, in history that is being mirrored in what's going on today. And we're not to the point where we can't turn this ship around yet, but we will be if we keep going in the same direction that we're going. And we will be a lot sooner than you think. It has to be acceptable to debate political ideas. It has to be acceptable for someone to say something that you disagree with. And you have to be able to say, well, here's why I think you're wrong. And even if you guys don't come to an agreement, you have to be able to weigh your beliefs against any logic they have, and they have to be able to weigh their beliefs against any logic you have in order for our society to progress forward into adopting as a society the best ideas. And when we have this situation where one group's ideas aren't argued with, but are simply put down as less human and less acceptable to discuss, and a hallmark of people who are acceptable targets of violence, then we're going to end up in a situation where people are going to die. Like that is, and it will be you against your friends and neighbors. It'll be you against your own family members, because there isn't a group of people that's based on race or religion or anything outside of political affiliation this time. This is the current regime. Anybody who disagrees with us is on the other side. Anybody who disagrees with us is the acceptable target. And that's extremely dangerous. That leads to much bigger death tolls.
All right, so we got to move on to the next story. I just wanted to remind everyone, too, that this is not the first time this has happened. There was a gentleman from a group called Patriot Prayer that was also assassinated or killed by Antifa a few years ago. And the reasoning was because he was, well, they said he was a Nazi, but he was basically like a right-wing Christian guy.
It was another guy that had a paranoid delusion that he was, the way he told it, he's like, oh, I was surrounded by these right-wing extremists and they were coming to get me, but I had to act first. I had to get the first shot off. It was my survival that was at stake. And like you could clearly see in the camera footage, because parking structures are usually surrounded by cameras, and this one was no different, that the guy was literally, he saw the guy, he ducked around the corner, he got his gun out, and he was waiting to ambush the guy. He wasn't surrounded by trucks honking and screeching at him, like he said. He wasn't, being accosted by American flag waggling, MAGA hat wearing chuds. He waited in ambush and killed the guy from a hidden vantage point.
No, that stuff might all have been going on in his head, though, and that's the thing. When you have this kind of, like, when the rhetoric goes from these ideas are bad and here's why to these people are bad and they're dangerous and they're a threat to you and your community, like Biden has done, and that's not new either. I mean, that was you saw that during the entire Trump administration. Oh shoot, what's her name? The congressman. I hate to say this, but the congresswoman who looks like a largemouth bass.
With the one with the screechy voice.
That said no. The other congresswoman that looks like a largemouth bass. She basically said
Lightfoot.
She said no. She's a congresswoman. Nobody should be able to go anywhere without.
Yeah, I know.
You gotta gather a crowd, and you gotta harass them, and you can't give them a minute.
Maxine
Waters.
Yep.
Maxine Waters, and she was suggesting that even if she didn't use the word violence, like she was basically suggesting that people heckle someone out of and there's been violence that has been attributed to that as well. there were people that acted on her words as well. So this isn't new. And believe me, if we were doing this, if we were suggesting that, for instance, everybody should go down to the welfare office and heckle the single moms going in there, which nobody should do, they're not going to understand it anyway. But it would be wrong even if they would. Right? Nobody's going to suggest that. But if we suggested that, you can guarantee that, you know, our doors would be broken down. Right? We'd have cops in here going, you're trying to stir up, there'd be some law we'd be violating. You're trying to stir up trouble. You're violating the Riot Act. You know, here, let's read it to you. But not in their situation because they're in power. They are able to do that because they have the podium.
Yep.
And it doesn't make it right. It makes it more dangerous.
They don't. Yeah, I mean, they don't care. It was like things like principles and hypocrisy. Those concepts don't exist to these people. It's about we have the authority. Winning. Yeah, we have the power. We have the authority. You don't. So sit down and shut up because we're going to do whatever we want. And that's it.
Well, and you also have, you know, some crazy on the internet says something like that. It's like, well, you know, that guy's crazy. Don't do what he says because obviously you're going to get in trouble. But if a congresswoman or
that's what
a congressman or the president of the United States says it, people are like, oh, well, this must be okay to do because, you know, they said so.
Yeah. We do have a problem with people like being too submissive to authority without questioning it. And that might be something that can only really be fixed either socially or culturally, because that's gotta end like yesterday. So anyway, we got to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. It is a very unfortunate thing that happened, and I guess the guy's out of jail right now because he's out on bail. So I guess we'll see if there's going to be like any actual justice done. I'll try and keep my...
The good news is he's charged with a hell of a lot more than just vehicular murder.
Yeah.
Apparently they've got something in North Dakota called failing to render aid.
Yeah.
Which basically means you let someone die. And another thing on top of that is this guy isn't a first-time offender. This isn't his first time booze cruising, if you know what I mean. And he's got a few more priors, including this. So, coupled with everything, coupled with basically a signed and sealed confession, which they do have, they got an affidavit on him. I don't see any sort of situation where this guy's not going down for a very long time.
Hopefully, and obviously this guy's going to be incarcerated, unless they pull out some weird defense or technicality out of nowhere that's going to change everything. He's going to he's like he's not going to have that because he's not rich and famous. But yeah. If they're going to incarcerate him, hopefully it is in a mental health institution because it seems like he is more nuts than evil. Like his ideas came from an evil place, but I'm wondering about this guy's capacity for recognizing and understanding reality, and like him thinking that just being able to pull that excuse out of his ass was going to get him out of anything. That's a severe out of touch with reality behavior for right now. And I hope that he ends up in a mental institution instead of jail and rehab essentially, and gets some help because it's a different thing than just somebody being completely malicious and tracking somebody down and killing them because they're a bad person. So yeah, just a rotten situation all around. And I really feel bad for both families because both I think the young man had siblings, and of course he had parents, and his parents have got to be going through hell right now. His siblings have got to be going through hell right now. And you know, the killer, his family's got to be going through hell too because they had to have known him way better than everyone else in the community did. And I'm sure there are people blaming them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, his own family. He's like, you grow up in a neighborhood, you full in a smaller town. You know the people around you, but there are always things going on in people's homes that everybody else doesn't know about, right? And when somebody does something like that, one of the first things that happens is the neighbors are all like, well, why didn't the family get that person some help? And you never know. A lot of that stuff can be very internal. When my son was little, one of the men from one of the houses in my neighborhood went to the park that the kids all walk home from school at past about 20 minutes before school let out, and shot himself in the mouth with actually a shotgun. So he killed himself, and he splattered himself all over some of the playground equipment that the kids were going to have to walk past. Like I don't know what was going through his mind when that happened. Obviously, it had to have been awful because that was a suicide. But there were people in the neighborhood that were mad at his family for not stopping him because they also considered it an attack on the kids. And God bless our first responders. There was nothing there for the kids to see when they got out of school, and they didn't even have to delay going home. But that situation, like the family had to go through losing their family member. They had to go through wondering, what they could have done about his suicide, all that. And then they also had to go through being judged by their neighbors for what he did. And like my parents, when people come and gossip about it, and my dad kept saying, this is a guy, we don't know what was going through his head, and we don't even know if he talked to his family about it, because a lot of times when somebody acts on a suicidal ideation, they haven't told anybody anything. And it calmed down a lot of people. But you don't know what this guy's family is going through in their neighborhood. They may be going through exactly the same kind of thing where people are questioning, how could you not know? And the answer is, a lot of times when somebody has that level of violence inside them, they may not tell you enough to understand what's going on. And if they do, it may be so normalized for you in your home that you may not understand the threat level. So I hope both the families are getting the support they need. And I hope there's not too much of that conflict going on in that neighborhood, because neither family deserves that kind of conflict.
One last thing I will say. If you want to donate to the GoFundMe that is set up, it is gofundme.com/f/Kylor, spelled CAYLOR -Ellingson, ELLINGSON. I'm only spelling out like that because there's another one with an E, Kyler, and not Kylor, and that one I think is just a copycat one. It only has $20 raised. The other one has 50,000. So look for the one that has 50,000, over 50,000 raised, and I'm sure that they would be grateful for any amount.
And GoFundMe hasn't deleted it yet. Good for you, GoFundMe.
Yeah, really. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I do have some Super Chow action, so I'm going to go ahead and read through those really quick. Some of them are from yesterday, I think. So Updog gives us $5. This was yesterday, but like really late at night. And
what's up, dog?
Yeah, what's up, dog? I love hearing you elaborate the hows and whys in feminist narratives when a feminist writes their story. I would be interested in hearing or reading off of stream any of the honey badgers explain why an aspect of art works or fails, so I can learn how to be objective. I get the impression that the arts are publicly ran by lefties, and I feel the traditional right-wingers are no help since our work isn't seen as productive like farming.
That's going to take 10 hours.
Yeah, I don't think we can get into
a
that
separate
right
show
now.
for that.
I'll revisit this question when I have more time. I think that we've gone long, but all I will say is the most beautiful art should begin from reality. And you can explore concepts, but it should be based in reality. And one of the main problems with what Hollywood does now is it's not so much reality as it is like narcissistic wish fulfillment, and that is the reason why so few people can actually relate.
This is a question for Nerdcast or Red Chill Cinema. Go to one of those shows.
Yeah. Well, I thought we did Red Chill yesterday, and this guy sent it yesterday, but it was like near midnight, and I was done with that show like at 8. Laggard Listener gives us $10 and says, "Hey Badgers, just leaving a regular tip here to help you out. I'm just listening to your videos a few days after they've scheduled. Thank you." Michael Emmerich Winberg gives us $5 and says, Meredith G gives us $5 and says, "Tip for the internet bill." So that's a joke, That's what she And then Michael Emmerich Winberg gives us $10 and says, "Anyone remember what was the great tragedy of the Charlottesville altercations and where James Alex Fields is to this day? My wager is the same place this guy deserves to go and a different place from where he is right now." Well, I don't know.
Yeah, that was another situation where he actually had some problems. And when we sort of dug into that young man and his history and his story, he was not a mentally healthy, fully capable,
he was
average guy, right? He had a mental health diagnosis, and if I remember right, he also had some intellectual disability. He should not have been in that situation to begin with, and it's probably true that he panicked and believed himself to be more trapped and more surrounded than he really was. And in that circumstance, it's very possible that that when he hit the gas, he wasn't intending to initially to harm anybody, and then once he did, it just went south for him.
Mm-hmm.
But he also was vulnerable to any kind of rhetoric that you'd see out there. So, like the very small groups of people that are actually out there blaming demographics for the social issues that we talk about, instead of blaming law and policy, may have gotten to him as well, and we don't know. And we also know that he was, if I remember right, he was raised without the support of a father, and that would have made it harder for him to take a level-headed approach to anything that he was experiencing. But I think he was incarcerated, and I think he may have been incarcerated in a mental health institution as well, partly because of what happened. So it's been a while since I've looked into it, but that's where it looked like it was headed the last time that I looked. He ended up
getting something crazy. I think something over 100 years.
Yeah. And basically it was determined that he wasn't gonna ever not be a threat because he wasn't capable of maintaining a hold on reality.
Well, there you go.
I don't remember that. I just remember they threw the fucking book at him to make an example of him.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next story. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And let's see. So, the United States Air Force, the Academy, announced earlier this month an internship opportunity that excludes biological cisgendered men and is only open to, quote, undergraduate women and gender minorities interested in aerospace, end quote.
Sorry, carry on.
The Brooke Owens Fellowship is only open to candidates who are, quote, a cisgender woman, a transgender woman, a non-binary, agender, bigender, two-spirit, demigender, gender fluid, gender queer, or another form of gender minority, end quote.
Everything in that sentence hurt me.
Yeah.
I have cancer now.
I'm suing.
Yeah.
The application also explicitly says that if you are a cisgender man, this program is not for you. There are 2 other spin-off programs available for biological men. the Patty Gray Smith Fellowship and the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship program. However, the Patty Gray Smith Fellowship is only available to black men. Okay, that's really useful. This news comes as the United States military as a whole continues to march toward embracing more woke ideology.
Look, biological men are a gender minority. You'll notice they had to use the phrase women and gender minorities, which is a dead giveaway that women are not gender minorities. They're 51% of the population. Even when you adjust for the transsexual population of 1%, biological women still come out as the majority. The idea that this is about giving minorities a fair chance has always been undermined since before it was even a thing, because for some reason women have always been counted as a minority even though they're not. Sometimes you'll hear this attempt to newspeak their way around this with the term minoritized individuals. Obviously, like all newspeak terms, this means whatever we want it to mean at the time. But I think what it's supposed to mean is people who are marginalized out of any potential positions, thereby effectively becoming a de facto minority. And in case you're paying attention, that's exactly what this process does to biological males. They were already a minority. And the expansion of the transsexual population made men even more of a minority. And by excluding them from opportunities, you further marginalize them, making them what, by your own measure, you would call a minority of minoritized individuals. They are twofold examples of the kind of people you should be employing by your own standards. But of course, these are not standards at all. They're not even what are sometimes euphemistically called double standards. They are the opposite of a standard. I don't even know if there's a word for that. It's the opposite of a standard. It's a point of reference that throws any chance of assessment or evaluation into total chaos. Well, not total chaos. It's a chaos that throws all the cards into the air where they can be selectively picked up by the powers that be. Make no mistake, the powers that be picking up the cards are misandric, oikophobic liars. This is exactly what you do when you simply hate men and will twist language into any pretzel that lets you exact your hatred of men. And the only reason we keep putting up with it is because it appears to be traditional to turn a blind eye to the hatred of men. So at the very least, stop calling yourselves progressives. You're not. You're hyper-traditionalists who are so far gone that you've lost touch with any burden or obligation to tell the truth. You hate men. Just admit it. You won't even lose support if you admit it. There are plenty of people who hate men and are proud to admit that they hate men. They will be on your side with bells on. And that includes men who hate other men. They are everywhere. So let's just start the argument where it starts. You can have the people who hate men. It would just be jolly nice if there was a parallel option for people who don't hate men and act like they don't hate men. That's an important distinction. We'd all be in a much better place if we adhered to the simple premise: judge people on what they do, not what they say. Because what people say is usually a lie, but what people do is never a lie. Wishful thinking. I know. I'm a dreamer.
Why?
But I'm the only one.
There's some parallels here again that I'm going to point out. You know, years from now, if there's anybody left to write about it, we'll see some article that starts with the American establishment enacted the gender and anti-white laws because they wanted to put their ideas about critical race theory and critical gender theory into law. And they believed in this theory that the world is divided into oppressed and oppressors that are not equally strong and valuable. The American establishment considered white males to be members, or considered white males to be members of the supposedly malicious and domineering white male race and white male gender, and they were the only oppressor class, and they saw the so-called non-male, non-whites as the most victimized and most valuable people of all. And that parallels very well to the Holocaust Encyclopedia's paragraph. The Nazis enacted the Nuremberg laws because they wanted to put their ideas about race into law. They believed in the false theory that the world is divided into distinct races that are not equally strong and valuable. The Nazis considered Germans to be members of the supposedly superior Aryan race. They saw the so-called Aryan German race as the strongest, most valuable race of all. Right? We can tell it's wrong. We know it's wrong when you do it to people based on their race. We know it's wrong when you do it to people based on being of a minority race or being of a race that we saw persecuted in the past in ways that led to a level of violence that people from the United States couldn't even comprehend until we saw it, and until our soldiers walked into the middle of it, right? But for some reason, we don't recognize it when it's targeting just European Caucasians and just men. Right? We don't recognize it if they don't have a religious affiliation with a victim group that's already recognized as a victim group. Right? And that's pitiful. That's a pathetic reason to miss something like this. Like, if you can't see the connection, then you have a weak mind, and you need to start lifting some mental weights. Ask yourself some questions. Why do I think this is okay? Why do I think this is not dangerous? Right? Why do I think this is not a problem? Because it is. We would know it was a problem if this Air Force Academy regulation or benefit said biological black males need not apply. Biological black females need not apply, right? Jews need not apply, right? Native Americans need not apply. Immigrants who are even legal immigrants need not apply. Anything at all but biological white males need not apply. If you can't tell that it's just as bad when you hear biological white males need not apply, ask yourself why. And if your answer is a bunch of rhetoric about oppressors and victims and privilege and stuff like that, then you need to go back and read every entry in the Holocaust Museum's Holocaust Encyclopedia and push yourself to consider, what if these people were talking about white males? Would I accept this? And if you would, then you need to look at yourself and wonder, how did I become so hateful? Right? This is something that you got to work out of your head if you're accepting it. Because you're going to be one of the people that has the greatest regret later on when you look back and you see what your ideas and your acceptance did to your neighbors. This is, you just can't let this go. And for everybody that's hearing it and they're like, that's not me. I recognize this is bad. What can I do? You need to start criticizing it to your friends and neighbors, to your politicians, your local politicians. If you're being excluded from something because of this, file a complaint, file a lawsuit. There needs to be a class action lawsuit against this. because this is in violation of the 14th Amendment protections for equal protection under the law. This is an American institution, not a business, not a private business, but an actual government institution engaging in racial and gender discrimination. There should be a manner in which that can be contested, and it has to be challenged. It cannot be allowed to stand.
The most interesting thing about this is it's weird. Like, the Air Force, like the other armed forces, are things that a lot of people generally don't want to end up involved in. Like, it's not like, okay, there are benefits to joining these military institutions, right? They will pay for your college, and and for a lot of men, and I'm going to say men, for a lot of men, it's basically their best option. It's not like they're necessarily doing it for some sense of glory or or anything like that. I think that, like, for example, if they actually have to go out into like a dangerous situation, which is the expectation if you join the military, that's essentially like the risk you take, right? Because if they need to deploy you somewhere, then they're just going to do it and you have to go. And that means that you could get blown to smithereens. And I think that most men know that, but they choose to do it anyway. And it could be because, a number of reasons. They could be patriotic. Their father may have fought in like the same, unit and whatever, right? There could be like a bit of a legacy there. But by and large, people who join the armed forces are aware of what they're doing. They're not it's not a cartoony thing to them. Like, this is serious, right? And it's funny because they're trying to promote this, like, all of this weird diversity stuff into the armed forces, where I would wonder, like, what kind of person would want to who thinks of themselves as non-binary or trans in some way. What kind of person would not only want to join the military despite that, but would want that aspect of their personality, that they are trans or gay or whatever, to be like a really important part of their military service? Because when you join the military, none of that matters. Like, you're a number. You are basically the property of the state. So I've always been confused by this, because this recent push, and I think that it is a top-down thing. Obviously they got trans people running the military now, and they're probably like making it a very high priority to make trans people feel special and feel seen and all of invalidated, etc. But it's just gonna get them killed. Like, I'm kind of amazed by this. And then on top of that, you're basically taking the demographic, which is straight white men, okay? You're gonna take the demographic that makes up the majority of the military, like in all forces. It's like 70-something% straight white men, and you're going to exclude them the most. So what is that going to do to your military? And those men, they're not doing it for their own egos. I think that they're doing it because, again, like I said, they're experience. Maybe it's a calling. Maybe it comes from their family. Maybe they're just desperate. They're like, well, look, I got to go to college, and I hear that if you join the Air Force, you'll learn all these tech skills. Maybe that's all it is. But the point is that they also realize the risk that it comes with, which is why the military pays for your college, and because you might not live, like, you might not live long enough. So it's just absolutely wild that this Air Force Academy in particular has it so incredibly backwards. I mean, maybe they just don't expect they're going to get a lot of applications. because I would suspect that they probably won't unless a bunch of men decide to come out as women so they can get like, get into the academy. But I don't know.
That's actually probably part of it, is to incentivize identifying as something other than a straight white male.
Yeah, other than a straight white male. But like, I think that has to be like fought like right up front. Like, the I'm sorry, but the best men for the job in the military are going to be like men primarily.
Yeah,
and you'll notice, by the way, that when they list off all of the groups of people that they are, that they do claim to support in terms of like who can apply, it essentially is every demographic they could think of except men, except for cisgendered men. That's the only demographic that's excluded, and that goes right back to what I have been saying about how the entire LGBTQ non-binary thing is really just about people identifying as not men, like to varying degrees, but that's all it is. So it's just like I'm not a cisgendered man, because they're the worst thing you can be, and I'm something else. And then they just pick from this list of not cisgendered men, and then they pretend like it's a separate thing, but they're just saying I'm not a cisgendered man because, again, those guys are the worst.
And this is an attack on the military as a whole, because even if you just include all men, regardless of race, regardless of sexuality, because this is mainly about them being male more than anything.
Yeah.
You're talking about 86% of the military, right?
Yeah.
About 14% of the military is female. About 86% of the military is male. That statistic's a few years old, but I'm pretty sure it hasn't changed dramatically. And it's usually young men who join on the idea that they're going to protect their communities, their families, and their country. And usually women like join on the idea that they're just as good as the men, not so much on the idea that they're protecting people, because that's what you usually hear when you hear about women in the military.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really an attack as much on masculinity as anything.
Absolutely.
And in particular on the men who want to protect their country.
Yeah, men who want to serve, and like they're either being pragmatic or they're legitimately patriotic, and both, one is just as likely as the other, because there's also an extremely high percentage of Southern men that join the military. Southern people tend to be a little, they tend to be more patriotic. There's a significant majority of white men that join the military. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I think that, again, a lot of this stuff going on here, there's like a desire to sort of re-engineer the demographics. And so they try to make it harder for white guys, to join. So
when you think about it, there may be one of the reasons why there may be an effort within the United States government to break down the element within the military of young men who join the military to protect their country might be because it's been coming out so heavily for the last few years that the United States government has not been using the military for the protection of the United States. It's been using the military, exploiting the military as mercenaries for the profit of a political faction within the United States. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with the conflict between what our military is promoted as being and supposed to be versus how our government has been using our military. And if they can fill our military with people who don't understand what it's for, then they may be able to dodge accountability for that. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we were maintaining a military of people who are dedicated to the country and whose goal in being the military was to be ready to defend against an attack on our country rather than be sent out as mercenaries for political interests, they might be held accountable, and that would be bad for those politicians, obviously. So,
Yeah.
Hence programs like this.
All right. Well, guys, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. We got to move on to the last story. And we're going to be talking about the Oath Keepers. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Mike J. I don't have any new super chats or chows. So take it away.
Alrighty. So jury selection has just started for the trial of Stuart Rhodes and 4 others. These 5 are alleged to be part of a group deemed far-right called the Oath Keepers. The 5 have been charged with seditious conspiracy stemming from their being present at or around the White House on January 6th, 2021. Insurrection. Lightning bolts. However, as the trial begins, one interesting motion filed by the Department of Justice has attracted attention. The motion reads, in part, quote, "The United States respectfully submits this motion for a protective order to protect from disclosure information regarding ongoing investigations related to certain Federal Bureau of Investigation's confidential human sources, who are expected to testify at trial, and personal identifying information related to those confidential human sources. At trial, the government or defense may call to testify certain confidential human sources who were either involved in the investigation that led to prosecution of the defendants or who became confidential human sources subsequent to the initiation of the instant investigation. Details regarding other investigations are not relevant and could undermine the operational integrity of those investigations." End quote. But
That
what
was
does
some
all that mean?
legalese right there. Does anyone understand what the fuck that was about?
In essence, this motion moves to protect possible federal agents and federal informants who may have been working with or who had knowledge about the Oath Keepers while they get ready to testify in the upcoming trial.
Right.
So the whole thing was glowing.
Yeah, it sounds like
Possibly.
It sounds like we're on the cusp of that stage in the gaslighting where it changes from "we didn't do it" to "yeah, we did it, but that's a good thing."
Yeah.
It's that traditional stage in between the two that goes, "We obviously did it, but you're not allowed to point out that we did it because we haven't quite arrived at stage 2 yet. There are still some normies who haven't completely thrown it all down a memory hole. We'll get back to you when we've achieved that critical mass of people who no longer care." Is this ever going to come to light when it comes to the aforementioned normies? This seems to be a main point of contention between the black pill contingency and the white pill contingency. The black pill interpretation is that these robber barons of the information age will bury all of this until history is completely forgotten about it and is rewritten forever. The white pill interpretation is that maybe 50 years from now, when things finally get declassified, future generations will look back and go, "Oh man, our grandparents really got suckered, didn't they? Just like their grandparents got suckered by all the shit the FBI was doing in the 60s. Let's hope it doesn't happen again." Yeah. Well, I suppose that's the grey pill. The interpretation that's as optimistic as you can reasonably get if history is any measuring stick. The white pill is this naive idea that the normies are going to wake up at any point in our lifetime, let alone in the next few years, and maybe consider apologizing to everyone they demonized as enemies of the state. Not that we want an apology. Apologies are meaningless, even in the hands of those who deserve them, and apologies are weapons in the hands of assholes who only treat them as confessions. So, yeah, you don't expect justice in your lifetime, is what I'm saying. In all likelihood, the FBI is going to get away with their crimes against humanity. The CDC is going to get away with their crimes against humanity. The CCP is going to get away with all their crimes against humanity. And then you're going to die, demonized into the grave by all of the above. Your task, ladies and germs, is to deal with it and live the best life you can under the circumstances. You came here for the black pill and you know it. That's what you're getting anyway. Yeah, honesty is the best policy, as they say.
Trying to live your best life, I don't think is bad at all. Because
it should be noted.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Good. Finish up, Brian.
I was just gonna say, like, I feel like this is just a diversion, but I'm saying living your best life is probably the best thing you can do, because while everyone around you that is still swimming in lies is becoming more and more miserable, either because they're incredibly black-pilled and think that there's no possible way that anything could possibly turn around and no one can save us because everyone that has any influence is in on it, or they're paid off, or they're shills or something, or they're just in ignorant bliss because everything the media says is true, and they're really angry at their political opponents who are basically hiding in, like dark corners and in their neighbors' homes and all of that. And if you're just living your life the best that you can and you're not engaging with those things and you're just concerned with what is in your immediate vicinity, you're going to be happier than the other two groups. That's all. So
the thing that is really going to be an uphill battle for the prosecution in this case, choosing or convicting seditious conspiracy is really hard to do, because you've got to prove that they had the capability to do this and they put their plans into action. And they seem to have a very loose, sort of tentative first part of that, because they say, I guess this is where the informants come in. They say that, oh, these guys had plans. They were amassing weapons and ammo. They were saying things like, oh, we must stop Biden at all costs, even if it costs us our lives. We've got to get into gear. We got to get the gear. We got to get into shape. We got to be there. We got to be ready. And it's like, that's all nice and that's all good, but what did they actually do? And so far, all they've proven is, oh yeah, they were part of the group that went in there to the Capitol in a military-style formation and proceeded to mill about with the MAGA meemaws.
Yeah.
Take selfies.
Take selfies
it's
with the
not
old
like
lady.
they were in there, they shot Pelosi in the back of the head, and they took out all the other Senator rhinos, and they did that one takedown from Warzone where you sneak up behind the guy and break his neck, and then they called him a Predator missile. None of that happened.
None of that happened.
It would have been fucking cool if it did, though.
It would have been horrifying. Would make a great movie.
Yeah,
but not a great reality.
Michael Bay was involved with the in the insurrection. That's what it is.
Yeah, and so their entire thrust is, well, they planned to do these things. It's like, well, yeah, planning to do something and actually putting it into action are two different things.
Yeah.
And so they've got a fucking uphill battle to prove that these guys did anything. And now introducing the Fed element, I'm not sure if it's going to be as big of an element as it was with the Whitmer thing, where it was feds all the way down from the inception.
Yeah.
Where, at the very end, the what was it, the car full of people they arrested? Of the 6 people in the car, 4 of which were federal agents. I don't know if it's going to be quite that bad, but that's what people, now that we've learned, there were definitely federal agents present. That throws this whole thing into question, and it throws the entirety of January 6th into question, because it was just not even a month ago, or maybe a little more than a month ago, where Ted Cruz was absolutely grilling them in the J6 inquisitions, like, were there federal agents present? Well, I mean, we can't say, were there federal agents present? Well, no federal. And they just gave these really mealy-mouthed answers while he was like, bitch, fucking tell us. Was this a fucking glow-op or not?
And it is more and more information is coming out indicating that actually, yes, it was. And of course, there's still questions about that one guy who may be a complete red herring. He may just be some nut job that was there yelling things. But and everybody knows who I'm talking about, so I'm not going to say the name because I don't know how YouTube is with that particular name yet. But we still don't know who the guy was. There's still this resistance to investigating the guy, and it makes everybody wonder. It's just like that scenario I talked about when we were discussing the election right after the election, and we were all being told this was the most secure election throughout the history of the United States, and if you ask questions, you're bad, right? Mm-hmm. It's if you've got a cookie jar with one cookie in it, and you come into the kitchen and the cookie jar is empty, and there's a child standing there with his hands behind his back, and you say, "Hey, let me see your hands," and the child's like, "I didn't take the cookie, but you can't see my hands." Then you're gonna wonder, did the child take the cookie? It looks like the child took the cookie. They're hiding their hands. They could be completely innocent, but if they won't show you what's in their hands, they look guilty. And that's the situation here. They may be, there may be something that they had a reason to investigate, but when it keeps coming out that there were surreptitious feds involved in every single group that they've had to investigate, and there are people involved in the January 6th investigation that they can't tell us about. They can't tell us, well, yeah, these were the guys that were feds. It looks bad. It's very bad optics for the FBI. And it's really starting to look like that organization is just corrupt from the top down, with a few people, a few whistleblowers here and there that will admit, hey, that this corruption is rampant in the organization and we don't know what to do. And that's it. We can't really trust anything that comes out of that organization anymore as official statements, because they won't show us their hands. They're standing right next to the empty cookie jar telling us they didn't take the cookie, but they won't show us their hands.
The FBI is a joke. They gotta go. They're absolutely screwed. I'm sure there are guys on the bottom level, the regular guys, that want to do the right thing. And this is I've seen an interview with a whistleblower that was on Dan Bongino's show, and he said that part of it is that there are good guys at the bottom, but they just they don't know what to do other than follow orders. They haven't been asked to do anything really unethical, so they haven't been put in a bad position. And then there are guys who they just want to make it to their retirement, it's close, or their pension or whatever, and they're just going to keep their head down and just get through it, and hopefully someone will do something. And they both are claiming that most of the corruption is at the top, which I'm sure is true. I'm sure there's a lot of manipulation going on there and stuff like that. But more of the rank and file feds are coming forward, but the whole thing has to go. The FBI shouldn't. I don't think it can exist. Certainly not as it is. But I don't know if we really ever needed it anyways.
Honestly, we don't need a federal police force. We have a military for the defense of the country. Yeah. And we have the internet, we have telephone systems, we have radio systems, we have tons of ways to communicate. Sure. It would not be that difficult to create a system within which state police departments can cooperate with each other when crime crosses state lines. and is actually on a national level, like organized crime and stuff like. They don't need a federal police force for that.
No.
They just need the states to be able to, if something starts in Ohio and concludes in Indiana, that the Ohio State Department and the Indiana State Department can collaborate on the investigation, and whatever took place in Ohio gets prosecuted in Ohio, and whatever took place in Indiana gets prosecuted in Indiana. Real simple. Doesn't need to be that authoritarian, and doesn't need to be that complicated.
Right.
But unfortunately, that's the way we have things right now.
Yeah.
The FBI doesn't answer to the people. I guess that was never the point. But it's at least supposed to answer to the elected president. But at this point, it's pretty clear beyond reasonable doubt that it doesn't answer to the president. They will spy on the president on the behest of the previous president. Is there any better demonstration that democracy was a fucking mistake?
Yeah, right. And, well, anyway, my feeling is the FBI's got to go, and I'll go ahead and say the CIA also has to go. And we need maybe, I don't know, some other system that is less centralized, that, you know, we could, like, just like Hannah suggested. And because it's so corrupt, man. Like, it's so bad. And it's probably been that way for a very, very long time. So now that, you know, people can see it, if they know where to look, hopefully that sentiment will continue to spread. I don't know how popular it is, because it you know, the media makes it nearly impossible to know, like, if they're the ones that most people agree with or not. So yeah, but that would be my thoughts on this. It is good to see that, I guess, like, you know, this should be getting exposed, and I hope that a lot of people see it. Are my only thoughts on that, I guess.
Nick, I'll be honest, I became completely disillusioned on the idea of an FBI when I found out they were pulling people off of investigation of child trafficking cases to go after grandmas who took selfies at the Capitol on January 6th. You know, I'm not even sorry for that. I think the organization is useless if that's how they're being used. If they're not even going to go after child traffickers, and they're just going to go after the political opponents of the current regime, screw them.
All right. So let us know what you guys think about that one in the comments. We're going to close off the show now. So I guess I'll just get us out of here. But for now, bear in mind, again, we are going to be going into the patron show, and we're going to look at a couple of different articles. So if you guys want to join us in the patron show, you have to become a badger yourself. Go to feedthebadger.com. $5 a month will get you into the Discord, and you'll be able to watch the additional content like you're doing now. And if you give it higher levels, you can even participate in the actual, like, panel discussion like we did for this show. All right. So please consider helping us out with that. Also, again, go to the fundraiser. We're really running low on time. We got like maybe 4 days left. And there's a link in the description, but it's at feedthebadger.com. And you can't miss it. And just follow the links to the Badger Media Blitz. Okay. So if you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our shows go live, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed. And most importantly, please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.